Have you ever felt love at first sight with a video game? Like, you just got into a game almost immediately and have loved it ever since? Well, for me, that was not the case with Baldur's Gate 3. And that may surprise many of you, considering that's kinda, one of my major things, but it's true. When I played Baldur's Gate 3 for the first time during the early access period before the full release of the game, I thought the game was terrible. So how on earth did I go from a total Baldur's Gate 3 hater to creating dozens of videos based around the lore of the game, challenges for the game, and everything in between? Well, gang, that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. I'm gonna go over the things that Baldur's Gate 3 managed to do so well that someone as stubborn and spiteful as myself couldn't dislike it forever. I've also got to ask you to subscribe and such before we start, maybe even leave a like if you're feeling particularly gracious, but otherwise, let's get into what I think Baldur's Gate 3 just does right. But you know what other game just does things right? Diablo Immortal. That's right, gang, this video was sponsored by Blizzard Entertainment. Whether you already know Diablo or are completely new to it, Diablo Immortal makes it easy to jump in and experience its dark, cinematic world completely for free. And it's a better time than ever to give it a shot. Use the link in the description to install, and then use code ZergRush when you install today to get free legendary gear and rare crests. Diablo Immortal has powerful abilities, quests, and a dark, cinematic world that feels great to explore on mobile. It's free to play on iOS and Android, making it easy to jump in from your phone. Take on daily challenges, master the rewarding combat system, and do it all alongside your friends with their easy-to-use co-op modes. The Diablo Immortal world truly is your oyster. Click the link below to try it out for yourself, and again, don't forget to use code ZergRush to get some free goodies. Thanks to Blizzard Entertainment for sponsoring that part of today's video. Now everybody, let's get back to work. So before we get into Baldur's Gate 3 itself, I'd like to give you just a little background about me so that you have some context as to why I didn't like the game at first. I have been playing games for literally as long as I can remember. I think it started with the Super Nintendo. I still remember that insanely difficult Lion King game, and I've tried my best in the time from my childhood to now to be open to trying new games or even new entire genres of games. The role-playing game field has always been one particular sect of gaming that I enjoy, and that's because of games like Fable, Fallout, the Souls games to some extent, and most notably Skyrim, which is funny in looking back because Skyrim's not that great of a role-playing game, let's be honest, but it's a great game. I think it's fair to say that I am a lover of games with large-scale epic adventures. So imagine my excitement when I began hearing murmurs in the gaming space about Baldur's Gate 3 and how it was gonna blow everyone away. And that excitement only grew when I checked Steam around like June-ish of 2023 to see when the game was releasing, only to find out that it was already playable. What I didn't realize at the time was that this wasn't the full release, and if I had just used my eyes a little bit, I would have probably seen that it said early access version of the game. I'm dumb though, and I missed that, so I bought the game expecting a full experience and got started. Now, we can all be honest with ourselves about one thing, and this video is about what Baldur's Gate 3 did right, not what it did wrong, but the Baldur's Gate 3 character customization is at absolute best lacking. I don't mean the options of classes and races and such. I think the spread there is pretty good. I'm talking about the literal character design options available to choose from. The system of choosing preset faces for your character is one that I strongly dislike, and I feel like having the option to create something silly or something that just feels right to you as the player is very important. Another thing I struggled with that is ultimately a good thing is the implementation, or I guess maybe adaptation is a better word, of the Dungeons & Dragons 5e system. This is something that completely overwhelmed me at the time, and after creating a male human fighter, because I'm autistic and scared of new things, I got into the gameplay, saw the layout of everything, the turn-based combat, and the 5e mechanics that all go along with that, and just gave up. 27 minutes. I still remember the exact amount of time. It was 27 minutes from launching the game to requesting a refund on Steam. After that, I did my best to forget about the whole thing, but thankfully with the full release of the game following just a couple months later, I was basically forced to give it another look because damn near everyone on the internet was talking about it. And now folks, this is where I'm gonna start doing tricks on it, doing splits on it. Doing splits on it's probably graphic enough, because my first impression of Baldur's Gate 3 was very deeply and annoyingly wrong. The first thing I want to touch on that Larian absolutely nailed here is that exact complicated D&D 5e system I just hemmed and hawed about. Before playing Baldur's Gate 3, my Dungeons & Dragons knowledge was surface level. I knew there were cool monsters, I knew you rolled dice and stuff to see how things played out, but I didn't know the intricacies. And while Baldur's Gate 3's representation of the D&D system isn't perfect, as I'm sure real D&D heads will tell you, it does do a really good job of incorporating as many mechanics as possible. From the character creation side of things, they've got plenty of options, aside from the actual look of your character, I should specify, because I just complained about that. There are 11 races in Baldur's Gate 3, and they all feature pretty much the exact same abilities and characteristics that they do in D&D. Then there are 12 classes to choose from, and each feels fairly unique from one another. And just a quick side note, because I'm gonna forget to mention it later if I don't talk about it now, each of those classes also gets access to unique dialogue options, which makes the roleplay aspect of the game feel a lot better than it otherwise could have. But then on top of the 12 classes, each class now has at least 4 subclasses, and sure, while there are more official 5e subclasses out there, I think the ones that they chose are a great representation of each class. Then, of course, there are the less player-specific aspects, like the 6 stats that every living creature has, armor class, the combat is turn-based and uses the general 1 action, 1 bonus action, 1 reaction setup. Every character has a set speed, or, you know, a movement they can make in a single turn. There are D&D spells, not all of the spells, mind you, because some just don't really translate over well to a virtual setting, like augury, for example. Like, how the fuck is the game supposed to know what actions the player is about to take and what the result of them will be? But there's a good amount of spells. There's D&D weapons, armor, creatures, and the game is even set in the world of Faerun, a very classic and famous Dungeons & Dragons setting that is already pretty well established. But like I said before, there's also a lot of aspects of D&D that Baldur's Gate 3 didn't include because they would be, pretty simply put, bad for a video game. Things like levels of exhaustion, which basically just give characters debuffs that would get old and interfere with the natural flow of the game. Things like flanking mechanics or cover mechanics, which aren't bad D&D things, they just are kind of a bit complicated for a video game. And they also take a very straightforward approach with travel in Baldur's Gate 3. When going from major location to location, the travel time is essentially skipped over. The biggest example of this is when you go from Act 2 to Act 3. You aren't traveling that far, at least in the scope of all of Faerun, but it skips right from exiting the Shadow-Cursed lands to being right outside Rivington. But I mean, why wouldn't they skip? If nothing of note happens from point A to point B, why waste time on it? There's so much in Act 3 that you kind of just gotta get started on it. And you might think that maybe they should have made something happen from point A to point B, but when there's so much to do when you eventually do reach point B, you're almost too overwhelmed by new stuff that you're not actually thinking about how you got there anymore. Though with that in mind, they also somehow found a way to make the individual sections of the game to have layouts that feel like they make sense. Like, the whole Act 1 map isn't really that big, but when going from place to place, like from the Grove to the Goblin Camp for instance, you don't feel like you're just walking a few minutes away, even if that's ultimately what you are doing. It feels like there's a lot more space in between this all. I think this is probably a result of the more isometric camera view, which keeps you focused on like what's right around you and not what's super far in the distance, but they've got it all figured out to trick your brain into feeling like things are much bigger. To sum up this little D&D section, I think it's fair to say that a huge reason that Baldur's Gate 3 is so widely played and so widely loved is because it takes the D&D system and it makes it actually make sense for a video game, cutting off plenty of the fat while still keeping everything player friendly. I started getting really into D&D after playing Baldur's Gate 3, and when reading through the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, I was just thinking the whole time, like, man, how the fuck did Larian turn this into a video game? And that exact sentiment is something that I think a lot of people carry. And like I said, it's a big reason of why the game was so successful. In fact, I would say that the adaptation of D&D and the avoidance of being overly complicated is one of 2 major reasons Baldur's Gate 3 is so great. Now, stepping away from the literal gameplay mechanics, let's touch on things that are a little less tangible. Reason number 2 is one that I think sweeps a much broader sort of category, and I'll just call it Baldur's Gate 3 gives a shit. Now that sounds kinda silly, but hear me out. Giving a shit means many things in this context, and one of the big things is that Baldur's Gate 3 is willing to take itself seriously. A game that I had a really hard time getting into recently was Avowed. Avowed is seemingly incapable of taking itself seriously.
I'm your death, swift and subtle, like a blade in the dark. And this here is Pod. Hello.
What I mean by that is that Avowed is littered with, like, Deadpool wannabe millennial-ass lines that just rip the player out of the respective experience.
Or what? You'll die on me?
Have to admit, that's a good one.
I killed him.
But my point is that games like Avowed, Borderlands 3, and Veilguard are constantly doing and saying shit that makes me feel like the games are millennial teachers doing the 6-7 or something. It doesn't fit, it doesn't make sense, and I hate it. Millennials, you're banned. You're all banned from writing anything ever. I'm 26, I'm not a millennial. I'm safe. Keep me out of the prison camps. When I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3, Shadowheart is Shadowheart. She doesn't look into my soul and say some stupid corny shit. Well, she does say she's God's favorite princess, which is kind of a fourth wall break, but my point is, she is her established character through and through. Karlach may be a good counterpoint to what I'm getting at right now, but Karlach is almost immediately established as silly, maybe a little immature, and most definitely out of pocket. When she says cringy stuff, that is because she is a goofball, not because some person writing for her didn't understand her character or has some sort of lack of situational awareness. It's because she's silly. She goes so much deeper than that, even like she carries around a lot of pain, she keeps the player at an albeit friendly distance at first, and as she opens up, she reveals that she is a lot more than just the jokester character. And also, just quick side note, because I know somebody's gonna say something about it, I am fully aware there's a little scene where Karlach does exactly what I just described before, where she looks into your soul and breaks the fourth wall, and if you have your finger up your nose right now and are thinking that's a good reason to disregard anything I just said, just answer me this. Have you ever experienced that cutscene on your own? No? I didn't think so. Baldur's Gate 3 actually does something pretty brave with its main cast of companions, making them all suck at first. Shadowheart is a brat. Lae'zel is constantly angry at everything and everyone. Astarion talks like that. Gale is pretentious and rude. Will is clearly hiding something from you, and Karlach, like I said before, just seems like comic relief at first. But what you come to learn is that these characters are all actually not that bad once you get to know them. Well, they can be bad if you want them to be, but that's not my point. They all just treat your character like they are a real person, and they keep them at a real distance, and they aren't totally comfortable with you at first. And sure, it's a fantasy world, but when in Veilguard, it feels like everyone worships the ground you walk on and instantly trusts and believes anything you have to say. It feels like the characters aren't real in the same way that they are in Baldur's Gate 3. Shadowheart does not know you, and when you tell her not to take you for a fool, she reacts like a real person, one with some fucking attitude, would. Most of the companions are downright unlikable at first, and that makes them feel much more real to me. If you want to get to know them, you gotta put in real effort, you gotta put in real time, and you gotta prove to them that you are someone worth getting to know, because that's how the real world works. And if you do enough, they can like, and they can even fall in love with you, but on the flip side, if you do some stuff that they really don't like, then they will tell you to go fuck yourself, and they'll move on without you. And this sentiment carries on for the rest of the game as well. By having so many characters just outright disregard you, it makes the world feel more alive and realistic. It's like, by not taking the player seriously, everybody is taking the player seriously, because that, again, is just how the world works. I am not that special, you are not that special, and our character, while being a little special because of what's in their head, should not be treated as special either for no apparent reason. A fun example of this is when you try to get into the circus in Act 3. The guy at the door lets his freaky friend smell you, and then he very well might just turn you away if he doesn't like what he hears. And if you make no attempt to dissuade him, either with persuasion, intimidation, or what have you, then you just end the conversation and you don't don't get into the circus. That is what being taken seriously feels like. And another aspect under the Baldur's Gate 3 gives a shit umbrella is the actual character storylines. Unfortunately, Karlach's story is clearly unfinished, and she feels like she really isn't allowed to have a good ending, and Will could definitely have some more stuff going on. I'd say most of the companions have stories that play out in fair and reasonable ways. Shadowheart is obviously my favorite character, but I talk about her a lot, so let's talk about Lae'zel instead. Lae'zel's story starts off very simply. She's a Githyanki warrior who... Wait, what's a Githyanki? Well, if you were like me during my first playthrough, then you have no fucking idea what a Githyanki is. But through Lae'zel, you learn a lot about their race and their history. They are a race of cutthroat perfectionists. They do not tolerate failure. They have the will and grit to conquer anything before them or die trying. Like I said, I didn't know anything about Githyanki before this game, so it was really rewarding getting to learn all of that from her. And I can imagine that it's also probably really rewarding to be somebody who does know a lot about D&D and Githyanki to see Lae'zel be a good representation of those things. It makes her storyline feel more real and more appropriate for the setting that it was set up to be in. It makes her fear of being turned into a mind flayer more real, her cult-like worship of Vlaakith more real, her pain and when realizing her whole entire race is living a lie more real, and her potential turn to a new cause more real. Through good script writing, reasonable character choices, and logical responses to those choices, Baldur's Gate 3 knocks it out of the park when it comes to writing good characters. And sorta in the same arena of good writing is also worth mentioning that Baldur's Gate 3 is very inclusionary without feeling overbearing about it. A lot of people, especially of the eclectic and somewhat eccentric sort of people who like D&D already or who are interested in it like I was, really appreciate the options to be exactly who you want to be. The options to be whatever race or gender or color you want. Most of my playthroughs are with red female tieflings. Why? Cause it's fun. I don't need to be me in this game if I don't want to. You get to be whoever you want, and in the world itself, you find all sorts of oddball characters that just might really feel special to somebody out there. And if those characters don't feel special to you, no worries. It doesn't feel like anything is being shoved down your throat. And while the character customization is incredibly dog-ass, from the hair to the preset faces, it's not good enough. It does lead us into the next section of the whole they gave a shit thing, mods. From what I can tell, Larian has been nothing but helpful and friendly to mod makers out there. They even went as far as to add a whole fucking mod manager to the game itself, making mods more accessible than they've ever been. Shit, they made a whole animated little thing about mods. That just came back to me right now. It's crazy. But not only have they been supportive of mods, they encourage people to create their own by releasing the Baldur's Gate 3 toolkit. Bethesda felt loathed to accept the modding community at first, and now it just monetizes it, which I guess is better than how some other companies treat mods. Looking at you, Nintendo. But Larian is the shining bastion of love and support that I think all game companies should thrive to be. Modding was once a silly way for people to make silly clips on the silly internet, but over time, modding has become a mainstay of video game culture, and accepting that and feeding into it is the very reason that I'm still talking about this game. I love mods. I love adding new things to the game. I love new spells, new weapons, definitely some new character customization options because, well, you know by now, but I love most of all that when I go looking through the mod options, I can feel that other people are also enjoying and loving the game like I still am. Mods like the Trials of Tav and its current reloaded version are so crazy and so cool. I have played probably, and I'm not jerking your balls. What? That's not what the script says. I think I've probably played close to 300 hours of the Trials of Tav Reloaded mod by now. Just completely offline, not recording, not doing anything content-wise, just completely loving it to myself. It is my job to talk about, play, record, and entertain you guys through video games, but here I am because of mods, spending my time off playing the very same game I talk about all the time. That is the power of mods, and more importantly, the power of them giving a shit. And there's a few other little things I'd like to touch on real quick that don't feel like they fit as well into the two categories, but are still worth mentioning. Well, some of them might fit, but truth be told, I didn't think about them until after writing the other parts, so leave me alone. But firstly, the music. There are so many different songs that will suck me right back into the nostalgic feeling of making my character for the first time, being stressed the fuck out during battle when I was still horrible at the game, or into the feeling of discovery when coming across places like the House of Healing. The entire soundtrack, every single song is really good at the very least. Don't even get me started on Raphael and the House of Hope. I fucking love that. Actually, something you'll probably notice with a lot of the past Game of the Year winners, especially the most recent one with Expedition 33, is that they really care about their soundtracks. So game devs, take notes. A good OST will take the overall joy extracted from playing your game up a notch for sure. Another thing that I think Baldur's Gate 3 might be a huge pioneer of is the voice acting. Obviously, voice acting has existed for a long time. Obviously, there have been great voice actors for a long time, but something special that I feel like Larian and the cast of Baldur's Gate 3 did differently is they all clearly love their game. The whole main cast has gone above and beyond to not just promote the game, but to continue being their characters, to continue supporting this game, the community. It's just this thing that they so obviously genuinely love and care about. Elden Ring is one of the greatest games of all time. It has some incredible voice acting in it, but they didn't make quite the same fuss that the Baldur's Gate 3 cast did. To tell you the truth, I couldn't tell you who voiced Morgott without looking it up, and that doesn't mean that he doesn't love Elden Ring or didn't do a good job, but I think that the pure love and support that everyone that worked on Baldur's Gate 3 has given, it's really gone above and beyond to make them and the game feel special. And before we go, I'd like to once again thank Blizzard Entertainment for supporting the channel. Folks like them make my job possible, so show them some love and check out Diablo Immortal today by clicking the link in the description and using code ZergRush. Now, I know I'm missing some things. This video is a little shorter than I originally planned for it to be, but I think I tackled the things that I really wanted to talk about it, and I would love to, and I know this is such a YouTuber thing to say, but I would love to hear what you guys love about Baldur's Gate 3, and not just in a leave a comment sort of way. You could message me on Twitter, I don't care, but I think it's fun to hear what everybody else thinks about the game that clearly like it or love it like I do. And it would be pretty silly of me to not mention how Baldur's Gate 3 and the community of you folks who watch content around it have helped make my channel bigger and better than I had ever imagined. I greatly appreciate you all, and I'm glad we all get to enjoy this amazing game together. But like I said, let me know if there are any aspects of Baldur's Gate 3 that I just completely missed. The game is so massive and has so much going on that I'm sure I did, so I'd love to hear from you guys. But that's it for me, gang. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't yet. I'm far from being done with this game yet, and see if you have the option to hype the video up. I still don't know what that means. I refuse to learn how it works, but I'm pretty sure it helps out. Thank you all so much for watching. GG's, everybody.